Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. In this video I'm going to be analyzing how the densification or mutation of the densification of bone results in a shift in consciousness. And you might say, well, how might a shift in the bone density of an individual create a shift in consciousness? Well, let's analyze it from a bone perspective and relay it back to the mind. What might be an inflammation that results in a densifying, or also known as a calcification buildup of the bone, resulting in a densening at its extremity? What might cause that? What you might say arthritis might as a result cause this particular inflammation. And how might arthritis resulting in physical pain or chronic physical pain then result back in its effect to the mind, resulting in a shift in consciousness? If in the idea of self-development, in the idea that from learning or specifically facing lessons, hardships, disciplines that which you can stimulate a logical or emotional intelligence from, based on the stimulus of a pushback in life, a setback, a point at which you must now formulate in which direction you choose to go at that particular point, based on the initial negative stimulus of the universe. Now you might say, based on your pain in your bones, such you might have arthritis in your wrists, your hands, your back, your knees, your hips, and predominantly your ankles if you've had connective ground injuries, which in the connective ground injury is where the essential initial generation of the consciousness, which reflects back from its upper energy, the sun, which radiates downwards upon the earth and impregnates it into a life force known as you. Now, in the reflection of the grounding process and reflection back upon a now visible self, you must now realize that the densifying of your bones is as a manifestation of a particular issue. Besides the idea that just the inflammation of the bone is causing you pain, what happened the moment that the initial injury, that which caused that initial inflammation to begin? Which, if you can analyze back to that particular point in your life, you will then see, you can pinpoint where that particular inflammation began, where it broke in your body based on the stimulus you felt in your mind. What was the thought that which caused you to feel that inflammation in your body? Which, as a result, the electromagnetic pulse radiated inward and imploded, which then created this pulse, resulting in the break of the physical event, resulting in now the injury, which has sustained a lifelong inflammation of the bone carrying this particular energy at the molecular level. What is the energy that is stored behind that particular molecular level that results in that particular inflammation, that densening of the bone, creating this nucleation point, if you wish? What is energy? What is the thought that you attached at the moment of that break? Because the moment you can break down and get back to the moment of the thought of that break, you can see a shift in the way you all of a sudden feel the pain all of a sudden. Because in the perspective of what the thought was, you now generated a logical or emotional intelligent response to the initial break, which has resulted in you now suffering up until now. In the moment you realize why the break happened, you now must realize what was the thought, which in the thought itself is the key. You might say, well, I might have had a negative thought. I was mad at my mother, I was mad at my father the moment I had that particular break. And in the action of the thought itself, you attached the pain of the thought to the break, which then manifested itself in the relationship going forward towards said parent, on and on and on. But let's get back to the initial root. You initially blamed a parent at the point of the break, which is a root at which you experience injuries arise in the body the moment an individual blames a parent in their mind. And in this psychology, we can actually analyze at the root cause, the train of thought, that which you can trace back the initial point at which the trauma sits, which the trauma is essentially, you could say, a form of a capacity of amounts of a measurable energy, which has a carrying source but is of an invisible and non-physical storing nature. It stores within a particular container known as the mind. And this particular trauma stems a power behind the ability to move forward in life. Now, if you were to analyze the trauma from this particular perspective, you would then see that the moment you experience the trauma and a storing within the mind, you attach the injury in your relationship to your parent. So if I was all of a sudden say, based on my problem in my right ankle, I could actively say that I can trace the thought back to my mother, which at the moment of the injury, I could actively say that I experienced a moment where I might have had a thought towards my mother, but in the idea that it manifested in the ankle injury, what might the ankle injury represent? Well, the depth in the analysis of the certain book known as Tell Me Where You Hurt and I Will Tell You Why. In this particular book, we see the analysis of the said physician, which he essentially analyzes at the key points at which the essential body manifests itself in correlations to the paternal and maternal energies, which in our energetic field, we are both combined as one being known as the self, which the self then obeys a human experience known as the body. And based on where you can pinpoint at where the trauma stores, you can pinpoint where the trauma stores in the body. From storing the pinpointing of the actual point of the injury within the mind, the trauma storing locator or the container of trauma, you can actively see where that said trauma then materializes into the body. And in order to heal the body, you have to heal the mind, which the moment you can create a healing part into the idea of the knowledge that the idea behind the thought itself is where the stem of the injury really truly lies, because the body could heal just fine, but the mind is where the trauma now resides. And so by healing the body, we must now heal the mind, which in itself is a gaining of perspective process over the initial injury, which as we further and further pull into this particular nucleation, which is an energetic point where matter has stored energy. And then the energy of this matter is the thought process that created the nucleation point, resulting in the inflammation of said bone extremity, as a result of where that particular bone manifests a key point in where the body manifested this pain. Based on this analysis, you could actively create a healing within the body from a psychological perspective, altering the physiological process. And from the physiological process, you must approach it from a psychological perspective. Thank you.